Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Qatar Masters 2023. This is an open chess tournament with some of the best talent in the world. Specifically, Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura are both over there on the other side of the planet playing some chess with a lot of other Indian stars and stars from all over the world. This is the round 3 recap, as I already said, and in round 2, we had a little bit of a historic day, a dramatic day. Magnus Carlsen suffering his lowest rated defeat in classical chess in nearly 20 years, if not more. And after the game, Magnus put out a tweet on social media where he talked about the fact that his opponent was wearing a watch. And he brought this up to the chief arbiter, which should be against the rules to have any sort of device, whether it's a smart device or an analog device. And the chief arbiter assured him that it was okay to have a watch. And there was another question brought up of anti-cheat measures. I'm going to show you a lot of the games today, but let me just quickly address this point because I do think it is important. Now in round 3, they changed the fair play measures. Now there is a 15-minute broadcast delay. The moves that are being made in Qatar are on a 15-minute delay. Spectators are probably not being allowed as much into the playing hall with smartphones. There are photos that were out of a player, of a spectator standing near chessboards with a smartphone, just like taking photos. That's a potential fair play thing, and now people can't bring in watches. So it's a shame it takes such an uproar and such a post from the world champion, given the fact that we know what happened in 2022, for any changes to be made. Now, my friends, just give me a minute or two. This is important. I want to address this issue with a lot of you and with the broader chess community and anybody that might be watching. Yesterday, after Magnus put that tweet out, obviously it gave me cannon fodder to put out a very good recap with a very clickbaity title. So I did that, and obviously, so did Hikaru. We're both putting out recaps, and Magnus actually went after Hikaru. This is not something that I expected because Magnus generally doesn't break the fourth wall of content. Like, he lets his games speak for themselves. He lets his results speak for themselves. And Magnus put out this tweet. Just to be clear, I'm not accusing my opponent today of cheating. Constantly using my name for clicks is fine. Yes, I'm in the clear. My career is safe. But this is just lame. Do better. And whether it was Hikaru or the editing team, the title that was put out is Magnus loses and then accuses with question marks and exclamation points. And for the record, this was mine. I said, new chess cheating scandal with a lot of question marks and so on and so forth, right? Both clickbait, right? And actually, when I first saw that, I was like, oh my God, he's going to go after me too. And if you look down on that thread, people were also criticizing me, justifiably so. I am fully aware of when I put out that title that people wouldn't be happy. I'm not going to get into like which title I think is worse. Like, you could try to make the argument that, well, I just said new cheating scandal with a lot of question marks and it was vague and you have to click into the video to actually get the fact that he didn't accuse him. And Hikaru probably also completely addressed that. The title was just not so great. He has, a layer there because obviously he probably has some editing team. I might need to be more responsible because maybe I'll get some more views on my recap. Also, there was an ad integration there. For full transparency, I didn't have any sort of like view guarantee. Like, I had to hit a threshold of views, and that's why I clickbaited. I had a flat fee for that ad integration. I was just late on a deadline. I was going to put that out yesterday no matter what. Regardless, he put that tweet out about Hikaru, okay? And I think it's good for me to address the clickbait just once. I like to do this every couple of months. I clickbait 100%. But I don't lie, and I don't cross a line of ethics. I don't cross a line of truth and falsehoods just to get views. Chess is a difficult game to constantly package every single day over the course of 4 years into a 30-minute video. And so when I name things exactly what they are in the recap, they do worse. In fact, yesterday, after I put out this video with this title, this is how it performed. For the first 23 hours up until right now, it's the best performing video that I have in probably about 20 days. That click-through rate is way higher than average. My average is about 7.5%. And it was 13% for about, 12 to 14 hours after putting it out. It's a very good performing video. It's performing very, very well. And that's what the purpose of a YouTuber really is, to a point. My job is to make sure as many eyeballs are on the chess world as possible. And if that is through a dramatic thumbnail and a dramatic title that does not cross a certain line, I'm not just blatantly slandering or defaming anybody, and it's just catching your attention so you click it, I reveal the truth to you in the first minute or two. I tell you exactly as it is. And I don't think, for me, I'm crossing that line at all. Maybe once or twice out of like 1,500 videos. I should have just not named a video a certain way. But I don't know what I would have named the video yesterday. I don't know. That's the reality. And I thought that despite some of my clickbait thumbnails and my clickbait titles, I am always delivering you a good 25 to 30 minute product that you can watch while eating, watching your on your smart TV while you sit in your living room, and just enjoy and just have a good time. Like, you're gonna have a good time. You're gonna enjoy watching my video if you can get past some of the all caps, because I changed the title of yesterday's video for about 30 minutes, and it was getting 300 views every minute less. I'm sorry, guys. That's a lot of views. And this is my job. The amount of views I get will completely dictate how many people have eyes on the chess world, how many people are going to be playing chess on a day-to-day basis, of course, my ad revenue and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, this is my job. Like, this is what I have to do. If you ask me, do you prefer your videos average 400K or 800K? I'm gonna say 800K. As long as I'm not, doing something completely egregious and alienating a massive population. I don't think that I'm doing that. I am pissing some of you off, unquestionably. I'm completely aware of that. But I also have the largest chess channel. Like, the strategy has obviously worked. I've definitely made several hundreds, if not thousands of you kind of upset, and the content has changed since like 2020. But I think I'm the same dude. The packaging of the content is just, changing a little bit. Anyway, that's how this video is starting. It's getting off the ground. And now I think we should get into the games. Cool. Terrific. Magnus Carlsen is playing an international master from India. And another person from India that does not have a profile on chess.com. There are so many good players from India in this field that don't even have, it's just incredible. E4, E5. And his opponent plays a Petrov defense. Magnus takes, gets his knight kicked out. And now in this position, there are two main lines, which are pawn to d4 and knight to c3. But Magnus plays d3, kicking out the knight, and then d4. So that's kind of interesting. Like, he spends 2 tempi on this, and you would expect that at this point, Black would just play d5, and they would play a completely symmetrical position, which I think is what normal people would but not normal people. I just think it's a very normal approach. And then, you develop the bishops, you develop the pawn, the knight, like whatever it might be. No, his opponent just goes for a very confrontational setup. So pawn to g6. Wow, look at that. Pawn to g6 is epic stuff. The bishop's coming here. The king is going to castle. We're going to have very interesting and imbalanced game. Magnus develops, and both sides castle. And now Magnus plays h3, preventing the light-squared bishop from going to the g4 square. Black thinks for a while. He can obviously do things with his queen side. He can play b6, c5, rook e8, knight c6. Developing the bishop now would be silly, because if you put it on the f5 square, this is just a very bad structural damage for Black. And if you put it on the e6 square, it's just going to be a target. Not right away, but I mean, just like, you just gave me something to attack. So Black goes b6, spends a little bit of time and plays this move pawn to b6. It's a little bit too early in the game to actually be making long-term commitments, to be spending such a long time thinking about long-term commitments, rather, which is why Black spends just a couple of minutes. And now Magnus plays c4. A very common move in the Petrov, because your pawn needs a little bit of help, and then you're going to put your knight. Exactly that. Black developing his rook, and Magnus developing his bishop, and Black developing his knight. All right, we've played 12 moves. This is like exactly how beginners should play chess. I'm not saying these guys are playing like beginners, okay? And hopefully nobody is wearing a watch. They've developed their pieces. Both guys have gotten their pieces out, and I think White enjoys a very slight advantage because he has a little bit more central pawn space, and Black's pieces are just a little bit passive. They're controlling the center from a distance. But if Magnus was Black here, you would probably assume he's going to find a way. And if Magnus is playing White, which he is, you're going to assume he's going to find a way. So he plays rook to e1, and now Black plays h6. And there's a reason Black spent 15 minutes on that one pawn move. It's very difficult to decide what to do here. First of all, Black has forcing methods, like knight to e4. Knight to e4 simply fails because of take, and bishop to g5, which attacks the queen. If Black goes for tactics, you can take the queen, you get your queen taken, but then you win the rook. So you can't really force with the knight. You could go here, but then you got to calculate a whole lot. And then if you don't do that, maybe you play rook e7 and queen e8 or something like that. You can also play knight f8 and maybe reroute the knight. So there's a lot of choices, and he decides to kind of play a very non-committal move. Magnus now seals the center shut. All right, it's very demoralizing when you think for 15 minutes and the GOAT thinks for like 2.5. He just plays d5. The idea is very straightforward. Black now has to go here, and black has to go here. By playing d5 and making a very committal decision in the center, sealing away black's control of the center, he is leaving, Magnus is, leaving his opponent with a very difficult decision to make. He's gonna have to put his knight on c5. He's gonna have to play c6. That might be the only way that black can do anything in this position. Knight to c5, bishop to c2, pawn to c6, there it is. And now it's just about clamping black down. So Magnus plays this very nice move, queen to d2. And he's going to play rook here and just not allow black to move. But black strikes back. Takes, knight e4. Immediately taking advantage of white's queen position. Obviously, Magnus knew that that was going to happen, so he plays takes, and I think you might have missed something, my friends. Queen d2 doesn't just want to bring the rook. There is actually an attack on a faraway pawn. A pawn that black moved himself out of inertia, right? So black kind of did that out of inertia, didn't really know what to do in the position. I mean, definitely didn't know what to do, I'm just saying. And now Magnus gives away his bishop, but takes on h6. Now, another thing is the rooks see each other and the queen is overloaded. The queen is defending the bishop and this pawn. So at an elementary level, you look at this and you go, oh, this is so stupid but you know, because just bishop takes d5. All of that happened. All of that happened. And it looks like white is just checkmating black. It is true. I mean, this is mate. Like, there is a mate coming. But not if black goes here. It's actually shocking. White has no attack. Queen h7, there's nothing. You can't mate. And if you try to sneak out and play here, I just go back. I just go straight back to where I was. So it looks like after knight g5 that black should just be losing. But he's not. So all of that happens. Knight takes e4, and Magnus chops everything down and goes, all right, now I got to win this game, right? How is Magnus going to work the endgame magic, right? This is Magnus's best phase of the game. This is a queen endgame. It's like a... You could argue it's a middle game because there's so much heavy artillery on the board, but it's more of an endgame. It's more of an endgame. It's a bit more of a tactical endgame because there's queens on, right? There's checkmating threats. The top computer move here is knight h2 with the intention of playing knight g4, but, you know, Magnus doesn't really believe in a move like this and instead plays knight d4, which probably is more human, but Stockfish hates it. Black plays queen f6, and Magnus just retreats. He retreats. And this is like when you reset the offense in a team sport, like basketball. When you can't get a shot off, you have like 7 seconds before the shot clock expires. You come back, and you say, all right, let's reset this position, and let's go. Rook c8. All right, rook c8. Pawn to a3. Now, another question you may ask, why did black not take the pawn? Great question. Bishop gets trapped. Bishop gets trapped slowly, because I can't take, because I would lose my knight. But let's say black played something like a5, then I would play rook a1, and that would be the end. So that would be nice, but unfortunately that's not what happens. How is Magnus going to win this position? First, he brings the rook, right? White needs to take a bit of a dark squared approach, because the light squares are being controlled by this piece, but Magnus also has a little bit of pressure on that pawn. So knight undevelops itself and plants itself in front of the king. And at some point, Magnus is going to have to go forward. He's got no other way. So he plays b3, kicking out the bishop, kicks it out again, and brings back the knight. And Magnus just plays. Like, he's just playing. You got to make moves. You can't just be like, well, it's equal. Look, it's equal. The game's over. No, you got to make moves. So black goes bishop e6. Magnus goes after the bishop. Now black plays a5. Mirroring these pawns, keeping these pawns on light squares for the future, right? So something like that, you know. And again, at this point, it's important to keep in mind, like, what both sides want. Who wants a queen trade? Who wants what trade? Checked by black. Magnus kicks the queen out and he's just slowly, methodically improving his position. And now he goes for it. Pawn to g4, restricting the light squared bishop and potentially an attack on this side of the board. Now, at this point, black needs to keep the tension. Instead, with 4 minutes on the clock, black goes for a rook trade. I'm allergic to rook trades. Take. Black probably thought rooks are off. Now we're in a real endgame. Queen and bishop versus queen and knight. Less pieces on the board, lower losing chances. But the losing chances are there. Because look at this. Pressure, Knight e5, pawn to g5. It's all there. It's all there. Now bishop c6. 1 minute and 50 seconds on the clock. Magnus's biggest advantage of the game. Securing control of the dark squares. And now queen d6. Now, you may be wondering why he blocked this. Like, why black did this. Because pawn to d4 is a dynamite strike, and the queen cannot get back. So g5 actually enables that because the queen has to take its eye off the knight. So instead of bishop c6, black could have played a lot of things. Bishop c8, queen d6, but he does it this way, and Magnus takes a pawn, and black now has to be extremely accurate. King to f1 is played. Black plays king to g8, making sure that is not a check. Magnus grabs the second pawn, and actually black is still doing pretty well. Pretty well, like, he's not completely lost. He can play something like queen e7 and queen d7 and try to get in and try to hit the pawn. But I think psychologically, you're under a lot of pressure here, and Magnus finds a very nice idea. You thought you were forking him, but it turns out Magnus does not care. He can lose one of those pawns with check. That other pawn is hanging, but after check and just king e1, there are no more checks. I told you white takes a dark squared strategy. White plays knight d7. There are checkmates. As long as the queen can somehow get into the back rank. Also, knight to f6 is absolutely lethal. Black now has to play queen d1, and in this position has to disallow white from marching a king. He has to, like, play like bishop. I don't know. I don't even know. But instead of that, knight f6 check. And unfortunately, it is just a forced checkmate. Magnus finds checkmate in like 8 moves here with knight f6, double check, sneaking to the back, to right here to force the king back. And now after king to h7, it's knight f6. And the queen gets in. So, endgame magic. This is exactly how Magnus beats like 99% of players on the planet. Stockfish shows a completely equal endgame with just some stuff to play for. And Magnus is back. A nice win, 2 out of 3, playing against these anonymous Indian title players who are very, very strong. Hopefully the drama of the tournament is behind us. But there you go. Now, let's take a look at the leaders. Hikaru is not in today's recap, not because of any YouTube titles, because he drew. Hikaru played against a strong Uzbek Grandmaster, and it was a good, hard-fought game. It was a draw. We're actually going to cover the game of Alisher Suleymanov, the Grandmaster that defeated Magnus yesterday and caused this little kerfuffle, if you will. He was playing against S.L. Narayanan, who is an Indian Grandmaster. Shocking. And then there's going to be another Indian Grandmaster covered in Arjun Erigaisi. And I will tell you who leads the event. 5 people are on 3 points out of 3. Knight f3, knight f6. This was a Grunfeld-esque CD, knight d5, h4. Very aggressive opening choice from S.L. Narayanan. And Alisher invites him in for tea. G3 puts the bishop on G4 to hit the pawn, and the pawn just goes all the way to H6. This is pretty ridiculous, but this is chess in 2023. Takes, and Alisher gives away his bishops, damaging white's pawn structure, but leaving white with the bishop pair, leaving white with the sniper from the corner, leaving white with the open b-file, and to me, I would play this position all the time with white. But black castle's long, and according to the computer, it is completely fine. So clearly, black knows what he's doing. He's got very good preparation. I would still like pay a couple $100 to get this position. If I could start every game with this position, I would be very happy. Look at this. He's got the open b-file, active operations, but black is defending himself. And black is going to go e5 next, then e4, and put the rooks, and white can't castle. White's king really has no home here. Maybe he's going to go to g2 or something. Let's see what happens. D3, trying to bring out the bishop. Now here, Alisher surprises me. I don't really know why he went queen f6. I mean, I felt it was very natural to go here. I think he just didn't want to allow the bishop to g5. But the computer is totally unafraid. Queen f6, and now a4. Just look at how natural white's position looks and feels. Alisher is about to go 3 out of 3. I mean, look at this. He's playing g5. He's counterattacking f4. He's going to lock in e5 with a big attack, knight d5. All white has is this, and you can't even play a5. So I don't really know how you're going to attack. Bishop b2, and now again, Alisher surprises me. He doesn't play e5. He plays a5, which is a massive commitment. a5 is a massive commitment. Essentially, he no longer allows a5, but this knight is destabilized now. Now white can go after that knight. There was no need to allow this, in my opinion, but I'm also sitting here on the other side of the world commentating the game. I'm not playing it. And immediately, white does exactly that. So Alisher plays rook to d5, preventing bishop c5, which would hit that knight that you just weakened. d4 is now played to allow bishop c5. e5 is played to undermine the d4 pawn, which allows bishop c5, but bishop c5 is still played. So what gives? Why would you allow your opponent to get any of this? And guess what? He continues to barrel down that side of the board. One move changes the whole game by Alisher, a5. And now, SL Narayanan, known online as Indian Lad, that is his username, is infiltrating, and he's got a completely winning position. The bishop snuck through, jumped the fence at the concert, even though they were at capacity. And look at this. Look at this absolute unit of a bishop. The barrel down here. c5 is devastating because you can't take it because I checkmate you. Queen c7. And now on move 25, dude castles. Dude just castles because his king is safe and his rook is coming. Alisher plays f4. I mean, he is busted up here, but he's not giving up. Rook e1. He takes, and plays rook f8. He's still got a lot of active pieces. And even though the advantage is with white, suddenly knight c6. You can't take, because you're pinned and the knight has arrived in the center. Oh my goodness. Apparently, instead of that, it was better for black to just play like rook e8 first. But he goes here, rook takes. Now knight takes on f3. It's essentially a race for whose king is going to die first. Pawn to g4. Queen goes to e3. Rook e8. And you know what's going to happen, my friends? Black is going to lose defenders. Black, unfortunately, has no anchor for this knight. The knight has to get out, and it's just too late. Rook g7, that hero is that pawn. On move 35, that pawn that you moved so early in the game. The pawn that black allowed into the position. 30 moves later, becomes a hero, rook to g7, and it's just a matter of getting all, and that's it. I mean, that h pawn is now a killer, and white still has a very powerful attack. He just goes straight for the endgame because you just cannot stop this. And my friends, SL Narayanan stops the Magnus Slayer, and he has 3 points out of 3. He is on a perfect score. Another game. Vugar Rasulov from Azerbaijan versus Arjun Erigaisi. Excellent player. e4, c5, knight f3, e6. This one, a Taimanov Sicilian with queen c7. One of the most aggressive openings in chess. You're about to find out why. f4. Both sides firing cannons at each other. b5 and all of this pressure over here. Meanwhile, white is going to line up the bishops and try to checkmate black. b5, a3 preventing that. And Erigaisi strikes first. You see, if Erigaisi waited at all... Oh, my neck is so stiff. If Erigaisi waited at all, if Erigaisi played like rook c8, this is devastating. The Sicilian defense is a game of one tempo. And e5 is coming. But now b4. And rather than take with the knight and go for the bishop, Erigaisi takes with the rook. And the rook puts pressure on all of this and this. Vugar Rasulov plays knight b3, and Erigaisi, knowing that the attack is coming, plays a5. A move dealing with this on the opposite side of the board. If white plays e5, there's not enough there. And a4 is coming, and I'm ready to win everything. So now Vugar has to remove the rook from the center to go to a1. Rook b8, queen f3, still looking for his chance. Brings the bishop out of the center of the board. Erigaisi maneuvers the bishop in front of the king. Now black's king is very, very safe. We might have a repetition, but Erigaisi says no. e5. Multiple ideas of this move. First of all, e6 is freed up. It's freed up for a knight. It is freed up for a bishop. It is freed up for this bishop coming to g4. You also have more of an anchor in the center. The bishop goes back. Now Erigaisi, a4. Look at this. Expert. Bishop here, pawn here, playing on all three sides of the board, opening up the center, transferring in the knight. Black has two rooks barreling down the b file. White set up for an attack, but the attack never got started. Bishop h6 is losing the bishop, but he's getting in. But I got news for you. This is just not good enough. And black's brick wall here is too powerful in front of his king. Bishop c6, a nice move. Queen defends the king. Knight c4. We kick out the queen, and we continue firing. And black is going to win this game over here. If black is able to secure the king side and actually win on the queen side, that is exactly how a Sicilian defense is supposed to go. Bishop back to a8. Knight goes to e6. And the rook takes on b2. Knight takes a4. d5. This is the move. This is a beautiful portrait of a Sicilian defense. Pieces scattered on all four corners of the board, some infiltrating, some stacking on the file, but d5 is game over because the rook is hit, the bishop is hit, there is absolutely nothing. Rook d3, rook takes d8, the rook is just hanging, by the way, but it doesn't matter because pawn to c3. What a move, defended by the bishop from a distance, and white resigned. He resigned because the pawn is a move away from queening. White now has to play defense, and it doesn't matter that black doesn't have a rook. He has two bishops, and that is more than enough. Queen e4, bishop takes c2, and you are completely winning. Arjun Erigaisi, also a very nice Sicilian win, also on 3 out of 3. And the last game that I want to show you is actually from your favorite streamer. International Master Eric Rosen, good friend of mine, playing against Josiah Stearman, one of the young, talented international masters in the United States, will be a grandmaster in the future, mark my words. And it's ridiculous. This dude does not have a profile. I literally made this recap of this game so that chess.com would give Josiah Stearman a profile photo. Please. This dude has like 50 photos of him online. He plays so many tournaments. Anyway, he played like US Junior. Come on, guys. Anyway, Eric Rosen goes for a Grand Prix attack against the Sicilian defense. Many of you probably play this opening. I used to play the Grand Prix when I was like 1700, but you know, it's not a bad opening. Knight f3, and now bishop to c4. And there's this really goofy line here where, you know, normally if you're going to do this, you want to play d3 to support your center. Those of you that play the Vienna might recognize this setup. This is not the Vienna because black played the Sicilian. I know you think everything is the Vienna because, like, you know, you learn the Vienna from me. Now you're like, oh, Vienna. No, that's a vehicle. No, that's not the same thing. Pawn to d4, and there's this very sharp line. Eric plays a gambit here with takes knight b5, which is trying to win this pawn back in a very exotic way. And we get an isolated pawn position. Knight takes d4, castles, pawn to c3. All right, very solid opening. Eric playing against an isolated pawn here. Good central blockade. Maybe he'll put his bishop here and here, and then he's going to build up his queen and rooks. Josiah plays rook e8. Eric plays bishop e3, probably anticipating this move, and probably anticipating this move. I wouldn't have given up the bishop, though. I would have went here. And then when black develops, you can play rook e1 or then bishop f2. And I just think, like, the bishop is okay, but I find that pawn to be quite weak. You know, rook e1. But Eric said, no, imbalance. I will give away my bishop. And now I'm going to kick your rook out. And then I'm going to bring my rook. Rook e4, rook e1. f5 here is actually an interesting attacking idea, just giving up the pawn completely. And then you can just, like, play king h1, activate your rook. But that's not really human. Eric now plays rook e1, and this game gets really spicy. Knight takes d4, knight takes d4. Very nice idea here from Josiah. He does not want the bishop pair. Right now, he gives away the bishop pair to reseal the center. The isolated pawn could be weak. For example, if black plays like just a pass-back move, moving the knight, that pawn could be weak in the future. So he goes here, giving up the bishop that's protecting his king, because now the center is sealed. And you're not going to pressure this. Queen to b6, and here Eric, instead of playing it calm, instead of being solid, decides to get on a roller coaster and plays bishop takes d5. Rook takes d4 is just a pure fork. It's just a fork. There's no way to get out of this. But there is rook e8 check and queen c3, pinning the rook to the king. This man, Josiah, thinks for a bit, plays king to h6. This man walked to h6. He said, your bishop is still hanging. And I got news for you. It's not just your bishop. If you move your bishop, discover check, and I win your queen or your rook. So Eric, only defensive move, king to h1. But he loses his bishop. Now, Eric has an option to take this bishop. But after takes, black would probably go back with the king and try to hunt these pawns, try to win that endgame. So Eric plays f5. Whoa! Trying to play f6. And you can't take because you would lose your rook. And if you play rook takes f5, then after rook takes f5, you have to take with the g pawn. And this is not any good because rook g8, and there are mates. I mean, there are mates looming All right, you got to be really, really, really careful here with black. But now Josiah, queen d4, the best response. And now Eric has to give a check and then take the bishop, or take the bishop. Instead of that, he gives this check, and the king is safe. The king is safe. And unfortunately, Eric kind of gasses out here, plays queen a3, looking for queen to f8, but black just blocks. A very sharp and exciting game where Josiah had to buckle up for a crazy ride. And even though Eric infiltrated on that 8th rank, it's just a matter of time. The king goes back to h6. And guess what? It's not white who is getting checkmated. It's black. Ah! It is not black who is getting checkmated. It is white. That is mate. You can take my rook, leaving it there. Josiah rips out on the g file. And in this position, Eric resigned because rook takes g2 is just a checkmate arriving in a few moves. A very, very fun game. Eric went for it against the very talented Josiah Stearman, nearly 2,500 elo. I think he has 2 Grandmaster norms. And I am wishing him nothing but the best for his title chase. Qatar Masters round 3 in the books. 5-way tie for first place. Magnus Carlsen back on 2 out of 3. Hopefully no more drama, no more memes, and nobody getting called out on social media, because we all know there is nothing scarier than somebody tweeting about you. Get out of here.